Okay, the notes on trigonometric, which we just say trig for short, like trig, right? But trigonometric identities. All right, here is the notes. This is a section that is really tough for a lot of students. You're gonna see these identities right here, these relationships between sine, cosine, tangent, and secant, cosecant, cotangent. And we got these are the ones that you know, that you're familiar with, the reciprocal identities. And I'll go over that and I'll tell you how those come about. You actually know those already. And then we got some new ones. We got the ratio identities and we got the Pythagorean identities. We're going to get to the Pythagorean later. But we will discuss these, the reciprocal and the ratio. So I'll explain how you already know this. I'll explain to you how you already know the reciprocal identities and how they come about and how you're going to use them. And then I'll introduce the ratio identities. Okay, so don't panic. Here we go. So here's what we have. And you know this already. You know 90% of this. So just go with me here. Follow. We have a right triangle. One of the most popular right triangles is a 3, 4, 5. Right? It's a 3, 4, 5 triangle. And let's say if this is the angle. Sometimes they use letters A, B, C. Sometimes you use the symbol here, right? And then I've asked you in the past to write these 6 trigonometric functions for this triangle or any triangle, right? For a right triangle, if you have all 3 sides. The 6 trigonometric functions, well, you know this already. This should be easy for you now, right? I'm going to tell you how this ties into these identities, right? So the 6 trigonometric functions, right? So if this is the angle here, well, then this is the opposite side. We know the hypotenuse side. We should actually label that one first. This one's opposite of the indicated angle. And this would be the adjacent, right? And so you have, and you know this already, you know that sine, cosine, and tangent. Because if you used what? So, right? Well, you use ka and you've used toa. So you know how to set up these ratios and you can get these and then you're good with this, right? So sine is O over H, so that's 3 over 5. And A over H for cosine is 4 over 5 and tangent is 3 over 4. O over A, right? So you know this already. And then here's where the, focus that a little bit. Here's where these identities come about. The question is this. The question is, if I know sine, cosine, tangent, and I know that you know that cosecant is just the reciprocal, right? That's why these first ones, right, they're called reciprocal. They're called reciprocal. But the thing is this, I know you know this. I know that you can pair these up, and that's cosecant, and I know you know that this one's secant, and I know you know that this one's cotangent, right? But the question is, in mathematics, how do you take 3 over 5 and make it 5 over 3? See, that's the question. The question is in math, give me a formula how to tell me that a 3 over 5 changes to a what? A 5 over 3. See, that's the question. How? I mean, I understand it. I know we just do the reciprocal, right? Reciprocal. But the question is, how do you communicate that in math? In math, how do I get a fraction and get it to and get it to flip over, right? To do the reciprocal. That's where these identities come from. This is the language of math. So I know 4 over 5 over here is going to be 5 over 4. I know that. But here's, I'm building up to explain to you what this is. These reciprocal identities. This. What is this? Okay, let me tell you then. Now, let's say you have a fraction, any fraction in math. If I have a fraction like 3 over 5, what can I do in math? What can I do in math to make this go to 5 over 3, right? The reciprocal. How do I get it there? Okay, well, here's what you can do. In math, you've known this, right? Let me give you an example, right? Example is if I have 6 over 2/3, right? Or 6 divided by 2/3, right? Now we've seen in math where we can flip something. And here's the scenario. Here's the case, right? This one you wouldn't do it here, right? This is my divided by, right? This problem is 6 divided by what? 2/3, right? 6 divided by 2/3. And see, we've learned this and we know that the bottom one gets what? It gets flipped, right? You do the reciprocal. So this turns into what? 6 over 1 times what? Here's the reciprocal, guys. Here's the way you can get something and make it flip over if you divide it. You see this 2 over 3? When you make it into a division, it flips over. See, there we get the reciprocal. It flips over. And then you finish the problem. 18 divided by 2. Okay, then the answer is 9, but that's not the point. The point is in mathematics, for me to get a fraction, for me to get a fraction, which was 2 over 3 here, and to somehow make it 3 over 2, you have to divide. You divide by it, right? So let me use this same 2 over 3. Forget the 6. If I start with 2 over 3, how can I get it to 3 over 2? If you do this, I'm starting with this, right? I'm starting with the 2 over 3. If I want to convert this to a 3 over 2, in mathematics, you put it in the bottom. You divide. You divide. See, 1 divided by. Now you don't put 2/3 over 1. 2/3 over 1, anything divided by 1 is the same thing, right? Like 5 over 1 is 5. 6 over 1 is 6. You don't put 2/3 over 1. Anything divided by 1, you get the same thing back. But when you do this, you'll get what? 1 divided by what? 2/3. And then what? That'll be 1 over 1 times what? See the reciprocal. See, you got it to flip over. 3 over 2. And my answer is what? 3 over 2. So in order to get, my point being here, in order to get a fraction or any number to flip over and do a reciprocal, you have to divide and put it in the bottom. So now let's explain these identities. These identities here, right? We'll start with these over here because we started with sine. We started with sine, right? Well, that's fine. We'll start with this one. Sorry. So we knew that sine, right? We knew that sine was 3 over 5. And what this is telling you is to get cosecant. Now we know we just have to flip it over. This is just telling you that to get cosecant would be what? Oops, that's not cosecant. Would be 1. You see they're putting the 1 over sine. 1 over whatever the sine is. And then what happens? Well, I know sine is what? 3 over 5. That would be 1 divided by what? 3 over 5. And in mathematics, this is how I get my what? I know what's going to happen here, remember? This is where they flip over. And this is where you get the reciprocal. I keep saying flip, but it's reciprocal. Because I put this in the bottom, it'll be what? 5 over 3. That's what these are saying. That's all that these are saying. We already knew that if sine is 3 over 5, I already know cosecant is 5 over 3. This is just the formulas of how it happens. This is just like the little identities, right? You put 1 over sine, and that's why you know sine and cosecant go hand in hand. And the same thing for this. The same thing for cosecant. Let's say if I have cosecant, if I know what cosecant is, how do I get sine? Well, I flip it over, but this is the formula for it. This is the formula for it. Okay, so that's what these are. That's what these are. In order to get cosecant, this is saying I'm going to get 1 divided by the sine fraction, but you know, it just flips it over. It just does the reciprocal, which is what we already know. Like, we already know how to do it, right? We already know this is 3 over 5. Well, this is 5 over 3. But that's what these are talking about. That's what these are talking about. Okay, we'll see some examples in the notes in the next video. These are new. We're not talking about Pythagorean theorem. The ratio identities. Tangent, you didn't know this before, but tangent is sine over cosine. Tangent is sine over cosine. You really only need to know this one. And I know from over here, see how tangent and cotangent, they're reciprocal of each other? While if tangent is sine over cosine, then cotangent would just be what? The reciprocal of this. See, this is sine over cosine. Now this one's cosine over sine. But really, if you know tangent, you know cotangent. But this is new. You gotta, now this is something you gotta learn. Tangent is sine over cosine. Okay. We'll continue that in the next notes and the examples.